Hey, my friends, how's your heart today? Tonight we begin a quiet journey beside Sudhana, the one who walked across lands and hearts, learning not through answers, but through presence. Each teacher he met revealed a gentle truth like petals unfolding under moonlight. And now, with each breath, you take that first step too, not rushing, just noticing. Before we dive deeper into the story, take a moment to like and subscribe, only if this journey feels worth it to you. And I'd love to know, where are you listening from and what time is it for you right now? Drop it in the comments below. Even distant lanterns feel closer in the quiet of night. Let the lights dim to a soft glow and the quiet whir of a fan fill the silence. Settle into stillness, let the day fade, and now let's gently begin tonight's history. The warm dusk settles over the edges of your thoughts like a silk shawl wrapped not tightly but with care. There is no rush, only a slow unraveling of the day. The sky outside your imagination bruises into violet and dusty rose. Somewhere far off, a gong sounds low, round and fading like a stone dropped into an endless lake. This is where you find yourself, at the gate of aspiration. You may not have realized you were already there. The gate isn't carved from wood or stone, and there are no guards, no thresholds. It's simply the moment you pause and feel that old, soft ache of longing. The kind that doesn't clamor, but gently asks, is there something more? Sudhana's journey began just like that. He was young, perhaps like you once were, or still are in some hidden corner of your spirit. He was surrounded by knowledge, wealth, and comfort. But one evening, beneath the gold light of a hanging lantern, he looked inward and felt something stir. Not a hole to be filled, but a fullness longing to be shared. The Avatamsaka Sutra tells us he sought the supreme and perfect awakening, but not by sitting still. He walked. He listened. He let himself be changed. And now you sit somewhere between breath and memory, and you feel it too, a quiet readiness. You notice how the breath moves across the inside of your nose like a whisper. Inhale soft and round. Exhale like the loosening of a knotted ribbon. The air tastes slightly cool, like the surface of a lotus pond just touched by twilight. You are not trying to understand everything. That's not the point. You are learning to stay. A cricket's chant rises steady and rhythmic, like a mantra without words. You let it be. You let yourself be. This is the first teacher, not a person, but a moment. The teacher of pause, of readiness, of willingness to begin. In Buddhist practice, the first step is rarely dramatic. It's a gesture of humility and internal bow. The path doesn't ask you to become someone new. It simply asks that you soften just enough to receive what's already waiting. You look out over the imagined road. There's no map, just dust sky and a few faint stars beginning to appear, like kind eyes in the dark. You aren't worried. There is time. There is spaciousness. The kind you forgot existed, the kind that makes room for becoming. In this quiet space, ask yourself without judgment, without haste, what is it you're seeking tonight? Not in words, but in sensation. What is it your heart is tired of carrying? What is it your breath has been waiting to exhale? Whatever it is, you do not need to fix it. You are not here to solve yourself. You are here to walk one breath, one step, one gentle teacher at a time. Somewhere within something swings open. A gate you didn't know was there. It doesn't creak, it doesn't clatter, it simply allows. And with that, the journey begins. The path continues beneath your feet, soft and warm like sand that has held the sun's memory. You walk slowly, not because you're tired, but because something in you understands without words that there's no need to hurry. The journey itself is the practice. There is nothing at the end of this road that isn't already beginning to open right here in the rhythm of your steps, in the softness of your breath. The stars are fuller now, not glittering exactly, more like watching. Gentle, spacious. They make no demands. They simply shine. You round a bend and see a small hut ahead, half sunk into the hillside. Its roof is thatched with straw, and a slow stream curls near its edge, murmuring to no one in particular. The doorway is open, and inside, bathed in the amber light of an oil lamp, sits your first teacher. She does not rise to greet you, but neither does she ignore you. Her eyes lift, and in that glance so ordinary, so undramatic, something deep inside you loosens. It's not recognition, it's reflection. You don't feel seen in the way the world uses the word. You feel met, like a silence inside her has bowed to a silence inside you. She gestures to the cushion beside her, and you sit the floor creaking gently beneath you. A single pot of tea rests between you, its surface still. She pours without asking, and the steam rises like a delicate incense, curling, fading, returning. "Why have you come?" she asks, but not with curiosity. She asks as though she already knows and only wants you to hear yourself say it. You consider answering. You consider offering words like enlightenment or truth or peace, but they taste too heavy in your mouth. Instead, you say nothing. You sip the tea. It is simple, bitter, alive. "That's good," she says, not smiling, not stern. The beginning of listening is learning to drink without distraction. You sit with her, and time unknots itself. It stretches out like linen drying in the sun. No lessons, no chance, just presence. The lamp flickers, the wind hums across the roof. In Buddhist practice, listening isn't a passive act, it's devotion. The ear is trained not only to take in, but to empty out. Like a well must be hollow to hold water. Your awareness must be clear enough to receive wisdom, not from books, but from the unspoken. She tells you a story not grand, not mystical, just something about her younger days in the temple. How she used to light lamps before dawn. How she would speak aloud to each flame, "May this one shine in someone's darkness. May this one warm a soul far from home." You picture her younger hands clumsy with the wick's face, still sleepy, whispering her small prayers to the quiet. You imagine her then not trying to be wise, not seeking transcendence, just practicing simple kindness, lighting one light at a time. And suddenly you realize that's what you're doing now. Listening not for fireworks of realization, but for small flickering truths, for one light at a time. You do not have to rush, she says. Even if you meet 100 teachers, each one will be this moment in different form. You close your eyes for a breath, and it feels like the sky moves through you. A feeling passes through your chest, not joy, not sadness, just tenderness. You let it come, you let it go. This is the teaching to be here, fully, humbly, receptively. You bow to her as you rise, not because she demanded it, but because something in you understands now what it means to honor presence. She doesn't speak again. She just watches you leave her eyes, the color of dusk, her breath as steady as a stone lantern in the wind. Outside, the stream continues its slow conversation with the earth. You step over it carefully, and the sound of your movement joins the chorus footfall water, night wind breath. You feel different, though nothing dramatic has changed. It's like someone swept a small corner of your mind, a little more room, a little more softness. And as you walk on, you reflect on what she gave you, not information, not direction, but space. The kind of space that lets the self breathe, the kind that helps the heart remember how to listen. The forest deepens. Somewhere far off, a heron calls once, then is silent. You walk on feeling less like a seeker and more like someone who has remembered how to arrive over and over in every step. You are not chasing wisdom, you are receiving it as it comes, as it is. The path grows narrower as you continue winding through a corridor of tall grass and wind-brushed shrubs. The moon is high now, a pale coin pressed into the velvet of the sky. Its light does not dazzle, it soothes. You walk by its glow, and every leaf around you glimmers, as if brushed by quiet intention. There are no signs pointing the way, and no companions to ask. But somehow, you don't feel lost. It's not that you know where you're going, it's that you're no longer asking that question. Soon the landscape opens into a wide plain, scattered with sun-bleached stones and sparse trees twisted by time. In the distance, the silhouette of a lone figure stands beside a rock outcropping. Their robes flutter faintly in the breeze. As you draw closer, you see that the figure is a middle-aged monk, weathered and lean, with skin marked by wind and sun. He turns to you with eyes that hold the color of ancient wood. His face does not soften, and he offers no greeting. Instead, he lifts a hand and points toward the horizon, a directionless gesture, as if to say, "This is where you are, and this is where you must go." You open your mouth to speak, but he cuts through the silence first. "You seek something," he says, "but before you find it, you must forget the shape you think it has." Then he turns and begins to walk, not toward you, not away from you, but across the open plain. You hesitate only a moment before following. The wind here carries no scent, only coolness, like the inside of a cave or the early breath of winter. Your feet crunch over gravel, and the sound reminds you of the impermanence of every step. The monk stops at a flat stone near the foot of a dry hill. You both sit. There is nothing around you for miles, and the sky above seems impossibly wide. You feel small, but not diminished, only placed rightly into the vastness. "This is the desert of doubt," he says, not as a warning, but as a naming. Everyone walks through it. Some make a temple from their confusion, some flee from it. But the wise, they walk straight on and let the sand shape their patience. You feel his words settle inside your body like warm stones. You look out across the emptiness and you see what he means. Doubt, when avoided, grows teeth. But here in this open place, doubt is just another silence, another teacher. He draws a small circle in the dirt with his fingertip. When the wind comes, it will vanish, and still we will draw it again. His voice is flat, not cruel, just honest. You let your breath slow, anchoring it to the ground beneath you. The earth here is cracked and dry, but it holds you. It doesn't offer comfort, but it offers truth that sometimes the spiritual path is not lush or fragrant or blissful. Sometimes it is bare, and that too is holy. You close your eyes for a moment, and the warmth of the rock beneath you rises through your spine. In this stillness, you reflect on the times in your own life when doubt felt like failure, when the absence of certainty made you feel like you'd gone off course. And yet, perhaps those were the moments that taught you to stay with yourself, to sit still in the not knowing like a bird resting in the eye of a storm. The monk rises, and with him the wind picks up slightly. A few dry leaves skitter across the plain. You think he might offer more teachings, more guidance, but instead, he turns his face into the wind and speaks only this: you cannot hurry stillness, and you cannot silence the storm by shouting over it. Then, without a word of farewell, he walks away, dissolving into the horizon like a dream fading at dawn. You remain seated for a while, letting his words settle not as ideas but as weather. You don't try to memorize them. You don't try to analyze them. You let them drift through you like clouds through the sky. Eventually you stand. Your body feels heavier, but in a way that anchors you, not burdens you. You begin to walk again, not faster, not with more certainty, but with a deeper willingness to be exactly where you are. Doubt is no longer the enemy. It is the desert that teaches you to listen for the whisper of water. It is the silence that teaches you to hear your own heartbeat. It is the vastness that reminds you you are not supposed to know everything, only to stay awake, to keep walking, to keep returning. As you walk, you notice a small plant growing through a crack in a rock, one lone green sprout. No one planted it, no one tended it, and yet here it is, surviving the wind, the heat, the cold of night. You pause, then smile softly, not because it gives you an answer, but because it doesn't need to. The desert of doubt is not where you lose your way. It's where you learn to walk without needing one. You leave the plain behind, stepping into a quiet hollow where the land curves inward, embracing the stillness, like cupped hands holding water. The night here is even softer, veiled in shadows, so gentle they seem to bow as you pass. Crickets sing in steady rhythms, and the trees whisper secrets to the wind, none of them urgent, all of them kind. A low wooden structure rests at the edge of a glade, nestled between two leaning trees. Lantern light spills out from within, golden and flickering like the last moments of a dream before waking. As you approach, you hear no voices, only the sound of sweeping the soft, repeated brush of straw against wood. Inside, sitting on a woven mat, is a nun, her robes as plain as the floor beneath her, her head bowed as she sweeps a few errant leaves from the threshold. She does not glance up when you arrive, but continues sweeping slow and steady, as though brushing the surface of a pond. The motion is so smooth, so quiet, that for a moment you feel as though time itself is pausing to breathe. You sit near the doorway, watching without speaking. There is no need. Your presence is accepted not as a guest to be hosted, but as a breeze passing through a still room, welcome, natural, unobtrusive. Eventually, she places the broom aside, folding her hands gently in her lap. The quiet between you feels whole, Not empty, a silence that contains its own language. You've walked through the desert, she says without turning her head. Now let yourself flower in stillness. You wonder what she means, but something in her tone makes you resist the urge to ask. Instead, you breathe in deeply. The air smells of sandalwood and old cedar. A single candle flickers beside a small Buddha statue, its wax pooling at the base like melted moonlight. She gestures for you to follow her outside. Beneath the open sky, she leads you to a pond not large, but perfectly still. The moon floats on its surface undisturbed, as if the water has chosen not to ripple, simply to hold the reflection. She sits on a flat stone at the water's edge. You sit beside her. In this place, she begins softly. There is nothing to earn. There is only what you already are seeing clearly. She picks up a stone and places it in your hand. It's smooth and warm, shaped by years of water passing over it. Do you know how many times the water touched this stone, she asks. You shake your head, then realize she isn't looking for an answer. Thousands, she says. Tens of thousands. Not one of those moments seemed important on its own, but they shaped this stone completely. You run your fingers along its surface. It's not perfectly round, it's not symmetrical, but it fits your hand like it was waiting for you. That's what happens in stillness, she continues. You don't notice the change, but the water keeps flowing, the self softens. The candlelight from the hut flickers in the distance, a small star between trees. You listen to the sound of the pond, which is in fact no sound at all. Just presence, just a stillness that doesn't perform itself. You close your eyes, and in the darkness behind your eyelids, you imagine your own thoughts as petals floating on the surface of this pond. Some are bright, some faded, some open wide, some curling inward. None of them are right or wrong. They just drift. They just exist. You breathe in. You breathe out, and for a moment there is no you doing the breathing. There is just breath, just moonlight, just a still pond holding the sky. You feel her hand rest gently on your shoulder, light as the brush of a leaf. It's not a gesture of teaching, not one of authority. It's companionship, a reminder that you are not walking alone, even when the path is quiet. She stands, bows once, and returns to the hut. You remain at the pond's edge, letting your gaze rest in the gentle dance of light and dark. This moment is your teacher now. Stillness, she taught you, is not the absence of life. It is the fullness of life revealed, not an escape, but an arrival. You remember a teaching from the Dhammapada, though perhaps not in exact words. Better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace. Here in this moment, you feel what that means. No explanations, no philosophies, just a breath, just moonlight, just this. You rise slowly, leaving the stone beside the pond. You do not carry it with you. It belongs here, shaped as it was by patient water. Just like you are being shaped not by effort alone, but by stillness gently touching the edges of your being again and again. As you walk away from the pond, the air feels lighter. Your footsteps are quieter, and within you something has softened, not fallen apart, but melted into peace. You do not need to know where the next teacher is. The lesson tonight was not about direction. It was about depth, about pausing long enough to let stillness do its quiet work. The night stretches wide, and the path reappears beneath your feet. You walk on, not to escape, not to arrive, but simply to continue. And in that quiet continuation, transformation begins. The path winds forward, lined now with smooth stones that click softly beneath your feet, like gentle chimes laid upon the earth. The air has cooled slightly, and the silence is deepening, not the kind of silence that feels empty, but the kind that feels full of invisible presence, as if the trees and stars themselves are leaning in to listen to your footsteps. A lantern glows ahead, swaying on a wooden post near a narrow bridge that crosses a quiet stream. You pause for a moment at its edge, watching the moon ripple across the water's surface, then step forward. The planks beneath your feet creak slightly, and the stream beneath murmurs with a soft, winding voice. On the other side stands your next teacher, a layperson, not a monk or nun, dressed in simple traveling clothes. Their face is weathered from time and sun, but their posture is open and relaxed, like someone who has learned the secret of not clinging too tightly to anything, not even to answers. They are placing small bundles of food and folded cloth into the hands of two wandering monks. Their gestures are quiet, generous, without expectation or performance. When the monks bow in gratitude and continue on, the layperson turns and sees you. There is no formal greeting, only a nod and the offer of a seat beside a fire. You accept, and the warmth wraps around you gently. It is not just the fire's warmth, it's the warmth of presence, of shared space, of quiet kindness. The teacher passes you a piece of flatbread and a small clay cup of warm water. You take it, you eat, you drink, you do not speak, and neither do they. And still something is exchanged. Finally, they speak not loudly, not as a proclamation, but as a continuation of silence. You have learned to sit with yourself, they say. Now learn to give yourself away. You glance at them, not sure what that means. But they aren't looking for you to understand right away. They continue tearing off a piece of bread and handing it to a small bird that has hopped near the fire. When you give without expecting, they say you make space in your hands for peace. You stare into the fire, the flames rising and falling like breath. Giving, truly giving, has always carried so many layers in your mind: duty, guilt, pride, identity. But here there is none of that. Just motion, just an open palm. The teacher begins to speak again, telling you a simple story, one from their own life, of a time when they had almost nothing: one bowl, a scrap of rice, a torn blanket. And still, when they encountered a traveler who had even less, they gave it away. I did not feel noble, they say. I felt free, like I had let go of something heavier than I realized. You feel those words echo somewhere inside you, in the part of your heart that still carries tightness around resources, energy, even time. How often do we grasp things, not because we truly need them, but because we are afraid to let go? In that moment, you remember the story of King Sivi, a noble ruler who gave away his own eyes to a blind stranger in need, and not as a test, not to prove anything, but because his compassion was boundless. He saw no difference between himself and the one who asked. And now you ask yourself, gently without judgment, what am I still holding too tightly? What might I offer freely, not out of sacrifice, but out of joy? The teacher beside you smiles, almost as if they heard that unspoken question. Generosity, they say, is not a transaction, it's a remembering, a way of knowing there is always enough when we stop counting. You let those words settle. You feel them melt into your breath, your body, your being. The fire crackles. A breeze brushes your face. Somewhere behind you, a night bird calls, once then falls silent. The teacher stands and begins gathering a few supplies, simple bundles tied with twine. They hand one to you, a gift for your walk, they say, as if that explains everything. And maybe it does. You rise and bow deeply, not out of custom, but out of an inner recognition. You have received something that cannot be weighed, measured, or returned. As you walk away, the bundle tucked into your satchel, you feel lighter, not because you gained something, but because you lost a little more of your clinging. You feel somehow like the stream you crossed earlier, flowing generous, without need for applause. You remember now the Buddha praised dana, the practice of giving, as the very foundation of the path. Not just alms or food, but offering your patience, your listening, your forgiveness, your stillness, your love. And so you walk with that in your heart. You do not know who will need what you carry, maybe no one will. But the point is not to seek out a place to give. The point is to be ready to give when the moment arrives. You stop at a small clearing and look up. The moon has climbed higher. The stars have multiplied bright and infinite. You press your palms together gently at your chest, and for a moment you simply say, "Within May I meet each moment with an open hand." Then you continue walking, not in search, not in need, but with the quiet generosity of someone who has been touched by a teacher and transformed not by explanation, but by example. The landscape begins to shift again. The trees thin out and the air becomes cooler, edged with a sharpness that smells faintly of pine and stone. You walk now along a narrow trail carved into the side of a mountain, not steep but winding a gentle ascent through rising mist. The wind picks up, brushing your robes, lifting small strands of hair like invisible fingers. You pull your cloak closer around your shoulders, but you do not resist the wind. It reminds you that you are in motion, not just through space, but through change. As you climb, clouds gather above the peaks, in the distance thickening into great woolen blankets of gray. A single flash of lightning pulses behind them, not close, not frightening, just present. You feel it more than see it. The air around you grows tense, charged not with fear but with expectancy. Something is about to be taught. Up ahead, at the crest of a small ridge, stands a lone figure. Their posture is strong but relaxed, their robes wrapped tightly against the rising gusts. You see in them the poise of someone who has endured more than one storm and learned not to flee but to remain. As you draw closer, the wind howls more insistently. Leaves tear from branches and spiral into the air like birds losing direction. Your next teacher does not speak at first. Instead, they lift their hand and point to the storm building above the mountain. Watch, they say, their voice steady, even in the roar of wind, and do not flinch. You stand beside them, your body braced against the elements, and together you witness the storm begin to break, not with chaos, but with rhythm. Sheets of rain curtain the valley below. The thunder rolls like a drumbeat in the sky. Yet in the eye of the storm, there is stillness. Here on the ridge, you are untouched. You want peace, your teacher says, not as a question, but a knowing. But often you try to build it by avoiding discomfort. That is not real peace. Real peace is when you stop running. Their robe flutters wildly in the wind, but their stance does not change. Neither stiff nor limp, simply present. You recall a teaching from the Buddha, as a solid rock is not shaken by the wind, so the wise are not moved by praise or blame. You feel your own inner winds, the anxiety that pulls at you, the doubts that swirl, the fears that whisper of failure. You want them to go away. But your teacher does not teach escape. They teach presence. Stand with it, they say, pointing to the churning clouds. Feel it breathe with it. Let it roar through you without knocking you down. You inhale deep through the nose. The wind fills your lungs like cold water. You exhale slowly, and you feel your shoulders loosen, your legs ground more firmly into the earth. They gesture toward the sky again. The storm does not last, but it teaches. You sit together on a flat stone as the wind whistles past, not to defy it, but to welcome it. Your body, once tensed to resist, now begins to soften, not in defeat, but in surrender. A calm surrender, one that knows how to bend without breaking. The teacher tells you a story, short, vivid, about a young monk who tried to meditate through a monsoon by forcing his posture to remain still. He strained against the wind, against the cold, against the noise. But in the end, it wasn't until he allowed himself to sway, to shiver, to feel that he entered the true stillness. Not because the world changed, but because he did. Resistance is not strength, the teacher says. Real strength is yielding without losing your center. You nod, and inside you feel something shift, a quiet acceptance, not of defeat, but of the truth that some things cannot be controlled and do not need to be. You think of the people you've met in your life who carried storms inside them. Some ran from them, some drowned in them, and some, a rare few, carried those storms with grace like folded clouds in the pockets of their robes. These were the ones who listened more than they spoke, who comforted not with answers, but with presence. Now you begin to understand why. The rain begins to fall lightly on the far side of the mountain, the storm passing gently toward the horizon. The wind calms, softens into a breeze. The clouds begin to thin, parting just enough for a sliver of moonlight to pierce through. You and the teacher sit in silence for a while longer. There are no final words, no secret mantras, only breath, only stillness after motion. As you prepare to leave, the teacher places a hand on your shoulder, firm grounding. Next time the wind rises, they say, welcome it. Let it carry away what no longer belongs to you. You bow and begin your descent along the other side of the mountain, the path slick with dew, but clear. Each step downward feels like a release, each breath more spacious than the last. The storm has passed, but it has left its lesson in your bones. You are not here to be untouched by life. You are here to be shaped by it, like a stone carved by wind and rain, softened, rounded, made strong by surrender. The path now dips into a grove, where the earth feels soft again, blanketed in moss and fallen leaves that hush each footstep. The storm is behind you, its memory still echoing faintly in your bones, but here in the grove, all is calm. You move like mist through the trees, your breath deep and unforced, your shoulders no longer braced against unseen winds. The canopy overhead filters moonlight into silver strands that scatter across the ground like forgotten blessings. In the hush of the woods, you hear something soft ahead, not the rustle of animals or the creak of trees, but laughter, light, sincere, and completely free. You round a bend and find a small clearing where a group of children sits in a loose circle. At the center is a young novice monk, perhaps no more than 12 or 13, holding a bamboo flute across his lap. He grins as he speaks, though you cannot yet hear the words, and the children around him lean in captivated. You pause at the edge of the clearing, watching. He sees you, his eyes bright and curious. He doesn't call out, but he gestures for you to come closer. There is no ceremony in the invitation, no gravity, just joy. You sit beside the children. They make space for you easily, as if they've been waiting for you all along. The novice offers you a fig from a small basket in front of him, and without thinking, you accept it. Its sweetness bursts on your tongue, warm but real, immediate. You chew slowly, the flavor grounding you in the present moment. He begins to tell a story, not a grand parable, but a simple one, about a frog who wanted to become a star and instead became a wellspring because it stopped trying to shine and began to reflect. The children laugh not because the story is funny in the ordinary way, but because it feels familiar, like a memory from before they were born. You feel your own smile emerge soft and slow. Something inside you begins to unwind, not dramatically, but with relief, as though you've been holding your breath for years and didn't know it. The boy puts down his flute and looks at you, head tilted slightly. His expression is open and clear. Sometimes adults forget how to see, he says plainly. They look with their thoughts instead of their eyes. You blink, surprised by the clarity of the statement. When I get confused, he continues, I sit by the stream and watch the water carry things away. I don't try to stop the water. I don't try to name every leaf. I just watch. And then it's okay. His voice carries no need to impress. He is not trying to sound wise. That is what makes him wise. You remember then what it was like to be young, to look at the world not with control, but with wonder, to notice the shape of a cloud, or the way light moves on a wall, or the sound of wind, and think, this is enough. Somewhere along the path, that wonder became something you tried to earn instead of remember. But now, in this simple clearing, it returns. You look around not through the lens of meaning or symbolism, just to look, the way a child might. The bark of a tree, the soft humming of an insect, the way moonlight catches on a blade of grass. Ordinary things, sacred in their ordinariness. The boy leans back on his hands and says, I don't think I need to grow up all the way, not if I can grow deep instead. And there it is, the teaching. As light as laughter, as clear as a bell, wisdom is not always solemn. It can be playful, it can come in figs and frogs and flute songs, it can smile. You realize now that this teacher, this child, has given you something precious, the mirror of wonder. He has reminded you that you do not need to outgrow joy to be wise, that laughter and insight are not enemies, but companions. You stay a little longer, watching the children drift into sleep under a great fig tree, their heads nestled on folded robes. The novice pulls a blanket over one of the smaller ones, then gives you a drowsy smile. He doesn't speak again, but his eyes say, you remember now. That's enough. As you rise to leave, you feel different, not transformed like thunder or fire, but changed like a seed that has been touched by light. You walk away carrying no scrolls, no mantras, no profound riddles, only the freshness of perception, the gift of seeing again. And in this moment, you reflect maybe awakening isn't always a mountain to climb. Maybe it's a child's gaze, clear, unburdened, full of sky. You continue on the path lighter than before. You notice everything: the tiny mushrooms beneath a log, the way your breath makes a faint cloud in the cool night air, the way silence feels alive like it's listening to you too. This is the teaching of the child to return to the moment not by force, but by curiosity. To let yourself wonder, to let yourself smile. You walk forward, not searching now, but marveling. The grove behind you fades into memory, the gentle laughter of the child teacher still echoing softly in the corners of your mind. You move forward through a narrowing path lined with bamboo, tall, slender, swaying slightly, as though bowing in greeting. Each stem creaks faintly in the breeze, a music of its own kind, subtle and patient. The forest here is quiet, in a deeper way, not from absence, but from presence. Every leaf seems to listen. You soon come upon a stone marker, old and moss-covered with no inscription. It simply stands there, as if to remind you that not all signs speak in words. Beyond it, a low-roofed hermitage appears half hidden by the curve of a Bodhi tree whose roots cling tightly to the earth. The tree's broad leaves shimmer in the moonlight, and nestled beneath its great canopy sits a forest monk, still as stone, yet so alive in his stillness that the world around him seems to revolve. He does not look up as you approach. His hands rest on his knees, his back long and soft, his breath invisible but steady. You sit across from him without being asked. There's no ritual, no instruction, only presence, and that is the lesson. He opens his eyes slowly. They are quiet eyes, not distant, but vast. He gestures to the small kettle beside him, resting on a bed of coals. The steam rises in lazy spirals. He pours you a bowl without a word, then one for himself. The tea is pale clear and in tastes of warm leaves and thyme. You sip it slowly. You feel it settle inside you like breath in your belly. Finally he speaks. When was the last time you rested without distraction? The question lands gently like a feather on water, but it ripples something deep. You think back to moments of lying in bed, scrolling through thoughts of seeking sleep, but never finding surrender of stillness that wasn't truly still. You realize you've often confused stillness with inactivity and rest with collapse. But true rest, that is something else entirely. He refills your bowl and says, to rest fully is to trust the moment. You look at him puzzled. He smiles faintly, sensing your silent question. When the mind rests, he continues not in dullness, but in wakeful ease the heart begins to heal itself. You stop chasing. You stop editing. You just are. He leans forward slightly, his voice barely more than breath. That is the beginning of freedom. You sit together in silence again, sipping tea. The warmth of it unfurls in your chest like a slow blossom. Time stretches, your body softens, and something within something always tense and holding finally exhales. You notice the moonlight flickering through the leaves above, forming shifting patterns on the ground. The forest itself seems to breathe, with you expanding and releasing in rhythm. You let your awareness follow your breath, but not to control it, just to accompany it. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, and then even the noticing fades. This is what the monk is teaching, not in concept, but in atmosphere, that resting is not a retreat from life, but a deep returning to it. That effort has its place, but peace does not bloom from effort alone. It blooms from stillness that is alert, spacious, and kind. After some time, he reaches behind him and produces a small object, a sand timer half full. He turns it over slowly, then sets it between you. You cannot push sand faster than gravity allows, he says. You can only sit beside it and be with it while it passes. You watch the grains fall one by one through the narrow neck of glass, each grain a moment, each moment enough. Do you see, he asks gently, even in falling there is grace. You nod your gaze still on the sand. Your thoughts for once are not tangled. They drift like clouds on a wide sky. You feel no urge to capture them. You are simply here. The monk stands and bows slowly. You rise and bow in return. No words pass between you. They aren't needed. As you walk away from the hermitage, the ground feels different beneath your feet, not changed but noticed. Every step lands fully. Every sound feels crisp, complete. You reflect as you walk. This teacher gave you nothing to remember, no verse to chant, no image to hold. And yet something essential now lives inside you, the memory of deep rest, of presence that needs no adornment. You pass under the last arch of bamboo and back into the open path. Your body feels warm. Your breath feels deeper, smoother. Your mind like a quiet pool after the last ripple has faded. Tonight you have not only learned how to move, you've remembered how to be still, how to rest truly without escaping, how to let the moment hold you instead of trying to hold it. And in that stillness, a new kind of strength begins to form, soft, unwavering, and entirely your own. The trail bends gently, now curving between wildflowers that glow faintly in the moonlight, petals like pale lanterns opening toward the sky. Each step you take feels unforced, like the earth itself is guiding your feet. You are not walking with urgency anymore. There is nowhere you must be, only this unfolding moment beneath the stars. Ahead, a single lantern flickers in the distance, swaying from a crooked wooden post near a narrow path descending into a thicket. The light is dim, almost hesitant, and yet it draws you like a memory you haven't quite placed. As you near, you see a figure seated beneath a shelter of worn canvas, stretched between two trees, a modest space barely more than a covering. The person sits upright, motionless, wrapped in layers of tattered cloth. Their eyes are closed, and yet their stillness speaks louder than any greeting. This is your next teacher. They are not a monk, not a child, not a sage in flowing robes. Their face is marked by grief, the kind that doesn't seek sympathy but has carved itself into wisdom. A bowl of rice rests untouched at their side, and a bundle of herbs smolders nearby, sending tendrils of bittersweet smoke into the night air. You sit nearby, waiting. There is no invitation, yet also no resistance. You are simply allowed to be here as you are. Eventually, the teacher opens their eyes, slow, deliberate. Their gaze meets yours, not with instruction, but with presence. You've come far, they say, but have you sat with sorrow yet? The question lands like a stone dropped into still water. It doesn't demand an answer, only awareness. I've lost someone, they say, eyes returning to the smoke. Many someones. At first, I tried to escape the ache. I tried to explain it, bury it, even make poetry out of it. But eventually, I had to just sit with it as it is. You listen, not just with your ears, but with your breath, your bones. A quiet ache stirs in you too, not necessarily for a person or a moment, but for every goodbye you've ever tucked away, every ending you never allowed yourself to feel. They continue. Suffering is not the enemy, it's the door, and there it is, the teaching. You remember the story of Kisagotami, the woman who lost her child and begged the Buddha to bring him back. The Buddha sent her to find a mustard seed from a house untouched by death. Of course, she found none, but what she did find was shared humanity, shared grief. And through that, she began to understand. Sorrow, the teacher says, is like fire. It can burn you hollow, or it can light your path, but only if you stop trying to control its shape. You look down at your hands resting in your lap. You notice the tension. You didn't realize you'd been carrying the grip of unspoken sadness, the stories left unfinished in your heart. You breathe into that space. You don't try to change it. You don't try to heal it. You just feel it like a warm stone beneath your palm. The teacher reaches down and picks up a small object, a folded scrap of cloth embroidered with a fading lotus flower. This, they say, holding it up, was given to me when I thought I could not go on, not as a cure, just as something to hold. Sometimes that's enough. They pass it to you. You take it carefully, gently. The cloth is worn, the edges frayed, but it feels alive, as though it carries every hand it's ever passed through. It smells faintly of sandalwood and ash. You don't speak. You don't need to. You sit in silence together, the smoke from the herbs curling around your body like a shawl woven from memory. You think about all the things in your life you've mourned, not just people, but versions of yourself, hopes you had to let go, places that no longer exist. You do not run from them tonight. You let them sit beside you like old companions who no longer demand explanation. Eventually, the teacher speaks again. Grief, when welcomed, becomes tenderness, and tenderness, when fully felt, becomes compassion. You feel tears rising, not of sadness, but of release. You let them come silently, slowly. Each drop a soft letting go, each breath a quiet prayer without words. There is no ritual here, no chant, just this moment, raw and real, where the heart cracks open and does not collapse. You stand at last, the folded cloth still in your hands. The teacher nods, once eyes soft. May this help you remember, sorrow is not weakness. It is the root of deep love. You bow not just to them, but to all you've carried, and all you're ready now to hold differently. As you walk away, the night air feels richer somehow. The stars shimmer not brighter, but closer. Even your shadow feels gentler, like it too has been softened by the teaching. You continue down the path, and for the first time in a long while, your grief walks beside you, not as a burden, but as a guide. You walk in silence for a long while, not because there is nothing to say, but because something in you knows now not all truths need to be spoken aloud. Some live best as feeling, as breath, as a subtle warmth, blooming quietly beneath the ribs. The path narrows again and climbs gently upward. Ferns brush against your legs. Somewhere nearby, a stream flows, not rushing, not roaring, just moving. Its voice blends into the hush of the forest like a single thread in a wide tapestry. At the top of the slope, you see a small wooden temple, humble in construction, its roof sagging slightly with age moss growing between the tiles. The door is open and candlelight flickers softly within. You remove your shoes without thinking and step inside. Inside the space is bare except for a broom leaning against the wall, a small wooden altar, and a woman kneeling at the far end sweeping the floor. Her movements are slow, almost meditative, as though she's not trying to clean, but to care. Her robes are patched, her hands calloused, but her presence radiates a kind of quiet joy, not the bright joy of laughter, but the deep joy of purpose. You stand near the doorway watching. She doesn't look up, but speaks as though she has known you were coming all along. There is peace, she says, in doing the simplest thing well. You walk forward and sit cross-legged a short distance from her. The broom continues to move, left to right, right to left, as though tracing the breadth of the temple itself. Dust gathers in a neat little pile. She pauses only to scoop it into a small basket, then continues. You begin to notice how focused she is, how present, as if sweeping is her entire world. Not a task to be completed, but a form of devotion. I used to chase big answers, she says after a while. Wanted to know the nature of reality, the secret of suffering, the path to enlightenment. And now, I sweep. She finally looks up at you, her eyes clear, but not sharp. Not because I gave up, because I stopped trying to leap over the present moment. You recall something the Buddha once said to his monks. Even the cleaning of latrines and the mending of robes is a noble path when done with mindfulness. Here in this dusty little room with no incense, no chanting, no grand altar, the teaching lives in every motion of her hands. She sets the broom aside and sits beside you. You think awakening is a firework, she says, but it's more like a candle, small, quiet, easily overlooked. But when you tend it patiently, it lights everything. She picks up a bowl and begins washing it slowly in a basin of cold water, her movements as rhythmic as before. Every act of care is a teaching. Every simple effort, when done with love, becomes sacred. You sit with her in the stillness, feeling the truth of her words without needing to dissect them. You think of all the times you rushed through ordinary tasks, all the times you waited for some special moment to arrive, never realizing that this moment, just like this, was already enough. She passes you a second cloth and gestures to another bowl. You take it and begin to clean, not out of obligation, not to be polite, but because something in you wants to move slowly, to tend gently, to be present without needing to make it profound. The cloth glides over the rim of the bowl. The water ripples slightly, catching candlelight and bending it into golden waves. You lose track of time, or maybe time loses track of you. Eventually, she places the last bowl on a shelf and says, "People think awakening is far away, but it's here, hiding in repetition, waiting in the folds of daily life." You feel the words settle inside you like tea leaves drifting to the bottom of a cup. She returns to sweeping. You bow, silently rise, and step outside once more. The moon has risen higher, and the temple behind you glows faintly like a lantern in a dream. As you walk away, you notice every step, heel to toe, toe to earth, every sound, the creak of bark, the sigh of wind. You don't need to search for wisdom anymore. You're walking in it. You're living it. Tonight, effort no longer feels like striving. It feels like devotion, like sweeping the floor, like scrubbing a bowl, like waking up again and again inside the most ordinary moments of your life. The path gently opens again, winding along the edge of a wide valley bathed in silver light. Below, mist hangs low like a slow breath exhaled from the earth, curling around treetops and dipping into hollows. The sky is clear now. The storm is far behind you, and each step forward feels like it carries less weight. Not because the world has changed, but because something in you has a loosening, a letting go, a quiet acceptance. You walk for a long time in silence until even the rhythm of your breath feels like part of the landscape. It's then at the crest of a gentle rise that you find a strange marker, not a shrine, not a dwelling, but a smooth, flat stone placed directly in the middle of the trail. There are no carvings, no symbols, nothing to suggest a story, only its presence, a quiet, unmoving interruption. You sit beside it, curious. The wind is still. Even the birds have gone quiet. And then from somewhere off to the right, you hear the sound of footsteps approaching. Not hurried, not hesitant, just present. A man appears dressed in faded traveler's robes, walking with a staff made from a single curved branch. His face is calm-lined but not weary. He walks to the stone stops and smiles faintly. Not every path leads somewhere, he says, settling beside you. Some paths just teach you how to walk. You realize this must be your next teacher. He doesn't posture, doesn't instruct. He simply points to the stone and says, "This is the pathless path." You tilt your head. How can a path be pathless? He chuckles, not unkindly, because the path is not a place, it's a way of being. And sometimes, the moment you stop trying to arrive, you begin to truly travel. You sit with that, the words echoing quietly in the space between you. He draws a circle in the dust with the end of his staff. We chase goals like dogs chasing wheels. Even on the spiritual path, we want to arrive somewhere, awakening peace, enlightenment. But all of that is movement in circles unless we learn how to stop striving and just be. You feel something in your chest soften, a kind of exhale you didn't know you were holding. You think back to your earlier steps, when you pushed, when you sought, when you clung to progress like a lifeline. Now sitting here with this teacher beside a path that leads nowhere, you feel more grounded than ever. The pathless path, he says, again asks one thing: can you walk without needing to get anywhere? You reflect on the teachings you've received so far: the nun who swept in silence, the monk who poured tea like pouring awareness, the child who taught you how to see. Each of them offered something direct, something simple. And now this teacher asks you to surrender even the structure of seeking. He tells you a story, as so many of them do, about a young ascetic who meditated for 10 years trying to achieve nirvana. One day, he saw a bird land on a nearby branch and simply sit, not doing, not wanting, just being. In that moment, something within him fell away. His striving dissolved. And it was in that precise moment, not of effort, but of release, that he understood. Most of the journey, the teacher says, is letting go of the idea that it's a journey at all. You stare again at the flat stone in the middle of the path. You expected something symbolic, something sacred, but maybe the stone is just a stone. Or maybe that's the teaching that nothing needs to be more than what it is. A path can be a path. A moment can be a moment. You can be you, no more, no less. The teacher stands, dusts off his robe, and continues walking, not forward, not backward, just away. You don't ask where he's going. That's not the point. There's no point, and that's the point. You rise feeling the weight of expectation fall off your shoulders, like a robe you didn't realize you were wearing. You do not need to reach the next teacher. You do not need to become anyone else. You are already walking the way by walking it. As you continue, you leave behind the idea of the trail as a straight line. It's not. It never was. It curves. It folds. It disappears. It returns. And it's all part of it. The moon is high now. The wind returns gentle as breath. You walk on not to arrive, but to experience. Not to conquer, but to listen. And in this moment, you feel something quietly joyful stirring within, like the first step of a dancer who no longer fears falling. The path now fades almost entirely beneath your feet, softened by grass and leaves that seem untouched by other travelers. There are no footprints ahead of you, and strangely none behind either, as if this path was made only in this moment as you walk it. You begin to understand the journey isn't through the world, but through attention. Wherever your awareness goes, that is where the trail appears. The forest opens gradually into a small clearing. In the center stands a tall, weather-worn drum resting on a wooden frame, the kind once used in temples to call monks to meditation. Its surface is cracked with age, its sides wrapped in faded red cloth that flutters faintly in the wind. The clearing is empty except for the drum and the feeling that something is listening. You move closer and place your hand on the drum's skin. It's warm, almost pulsing, as though it remembers being struck, as though it remembers sound. You sit down before it, unsure if there's a teacher here at all, and then you hear it. Not a voice, not from a mouth, but a vibration. A deep, resonant hum rising through the earth itself. You cannot tell if it's the drum, the wind, or your own body responding to something beyond words. From behind a tree, a monk appears. His robes are simple ash-colored. He is elderly, but moves without hesitation. He does not greet you. He simply bows to the drum and then to you. He walks over and strikes the drum once with his open palm. Boom! The sound rolls through the clearing like thunder that forgets to leave. You feel it in your chest, in your arms, behind your eyes. Not painful awakening. It echoes not in the air, but inside you. He sits beside you and says nothing for a while, just breathes. Then finally, he speaks not loudly, but with the resonance of someone who has spoken only when necessary for a long time. Words are not the only way the Dharma speaks. You wait not to reply, but to receive. He strikes the drum again. Boom! It is the sound of presence, the sound of return, the sound that calls you back from the edges of thought, back into the center of your breath, back into the pulse of life itself. This drum, he says, was struck every morning and evening in the old monasteries, not just to call the monks to gather, but to remind them you are here. right now. He gestures toward your heart. This is your true temple, the one you carry wherever you go, but you must listen to it. You place a hand on your chest and feel it, the steady rhythm, the internal drum that's been with you since before memory. You realize you rarely hear it. You rarely listen. The monk continues. Modern ears are tuned to noise, not sound, to information, not wisdom. The Dharma doesn't always speak through words. Sometimes it thunders through silence. Sometimes it pulses through your own skin. You think back to the previous teachers, the broom, the stone, the cloth, the flute, the gaze of a child. None of it delivered in speeches. All of it felt. The monk strikes the drum, a third time softer now, but even deeper somehow. The sound doesn't startle, it envelops, like the closing of a door or the folding of wings. Then he says, only this: when you cannot understand, listen. When you cannot speak, listen. When the world becomes too loud, listen. He rises and bows to the drum again. He does not bow to you this time, nor do you expect it. He walks into the woods, footsteps silent. His teaching remains echoing within. You sit before the drum and listen, not for more sounds, but for the space they leave behind. And in that space, something becomes clear. Presence is not just a practice, it is the very language of the sacred. You reach into your satchel and find a smooth stone picked up unknowingly somewhere along the trail. You place it beside the drum, not as an offering, but as a remembrance. A way to say, I was here, I heard, I listened. As you stand and leave the clearing, your footsteps seem quieter, not because you are lighter, but because you are more attuned. Even the rustling leaves and creaking branches feel like a dialogue now, as if the whole world is gently speaking, just waiting for you to hear it. The Dharma, you realize, is everywhere, not just in teachings, but in thunder, in silence, in the rhythm of your own heart. And from now on, you will listen. You leave the clearing of the Dharma drum with your footsteps softer, your ears tuned not just to sound, but to space. The forest now feels like a great bell whose silence rings as clearly as its sound once did. You are walking, but more than that, you are receiving. Every breeze, every creaking bough, every moment arriving fully, then vanishing without force. The trees part up ahead, and the path leads you into a wide field bathed in pale starlight. Grass sways gently in the wind, whispering over the land like a memory being told. In the distance stands a figure, elderly, blindfolded, leaning on a staff. They do not turn as you approach, yet something about their presence suggests they already know you're near. There is no surprise in their posture, only stillness, only welcome. This is your next teacher, though they carry no book, speak no mantra, wear no robes of rank. Their eyes are covered by a simple white cloth, and their hands rest gently over their staff, like a bird alighting on a branch. You sit in the grass beside them, unsure of what will be asked, or what can even be offered when words are absent. The wind picks up. The stars wheel overhead. A long silence passes before the teacher finally speaks, voice soft and low like the first breath before dawn. I have not seen the world in 40 years, they say, but I have never known it more clearly than I do now. You remain quiet. Vision can deceive, they continue. It tells us what something looks like, not what it is. True wisdom comes not from the eye, but from trust. You look at them, this person who has moved through the world without sight, yet speaks with the certainty of someone who has seen deeply into the heart of things. Their face is weathered but calm, their presence still, and slowly, gently, you begin to understand what this teaching might be. Most seekers want clarity, they say, but what they need is faith. Not blind belief, but the kind of faith that allows you to step forward even when you do not know where your foot will land. They raise their head slightly, blindfold still in place. Do you trust this path? The question hangs in the air like a floating lantern, gentle but inescapable. You hesitate not because the answer is unclear, but because it is too honest for words. You think of every moment you've doubted, every time you've looked for signs, for guarantees. And now you're sitting beside someone who has walked longer, farther, and deeper without needing to see. I once walked only by instinct, the teacher says, and stumbled often. But over time, I learned to let go of the need to grasp everything. I began to feel the path with my whole being, my feet, my breath, my heart. You listen closely. They reach into a satchel at their side and pull out a single flower, a small closed bud of white. This flower will bloom in the dark, they whisper. It does not ask for sunlight. It only listens to the rhythms of the earth. They place the flower in your hand. This is how awakening often begins, not with brightness, but with quiet trust, not by knowing, but by listening. You must allow your own wisdom to open when the time is right and not before. You turn the flower gently in your fingers. Its petals are soft, tender, as if made of breath. You think back on your own journey, how often you have searched with your eyes, with your mind trying to grasp the next teaching, the next step. But here in the presence of someone who sees nothing and yet misses nothing, you realize some truths cannot be seen, only felt. The teacher turns slightly toward you. You carry a lantern, they say, but not in your hands, in your being. Stop trying to shine it on every corner. Let it illuminate the step you're on. There is silence again, not hollow, but full alive, as if every blade of grass is leaning in to listen. You sit together for some time, not needing to move, not needing to leave. You feel the earth beneath you holding you up. You feel the wind on your skin, not cold, not warm, just present. You close your eyes. You practice not seeing. And in that darkness, something stirs, not an image, not a thought, but a feeling that you are safe even when you do not know the way. That something deep in you already understands the rhythm. You just forgot how to trust it. Eventually, you open your eyes. The teacher has not moved. The flower is still in your hand, its petals beginning to open just slightly. You bow deeply and wordlessly. The teacher smiles. Even the stars, they say, shine best in darkness. You rise and leave the field, the flower resting softly in your satchel. As you walk, you keep your gaze loose, your step light. You do not rush. You do not search. For the first time, you begin to feel your way forward, not with eyes, but with the quiet trust of one who knows. You do not need to see everything to be fully awake. The field behind you dissolves into a soft mist, and the path once again narrows, this time, not through trees or bamboo, but along a jagged cliffside. There is no handrail, no barrier between your feet and the edge. The wind rises here no longer playful, but sharp whispering through the rocks with the voice of everything you've ever feared letting go of. The sky is vast. There are no clouds, only stars so bright and close you feel they could fall at any moment. The moon has grown thin, just a silver thread above the horizon, as though even it has surrendered a little more of itself to the night. You follow the narrow trail, each step measured aware. The gravel shifts beneath your feet, and then suddenly the path ends. There is no warning, just a ledge, and at the edge of that ledge, sitting with their feet dangling over nothing, is your next teacher. They are younger than you expect, not a sage, not a mystic cloaked in riddles, but someone who wears the look of someone who has wept recently and deeply. Their eyes reflect starlight. Their hands rest in their lap, open, ungrasping. They do not look back at you, only forward into the dark. You sit beside them. You don't speak. For a long while, you both sit in silence, legs hanging off the cliff like children watching the sea. Eventually, they speak not to you directly, but to the vastness. This is where I let go, they say. You turn your head slightly. Of what you ask? They smile softly. Everything I was afraid to stop being. You look out over the edge. It drops into darkness, no bottom, no markers, no promise. Just space, just silence, just the unknown. I stood here for days, the teacher continues, clinging to every version of myself. The one who needed to be good, the one who needed to succeed, the one who needed to be healed, perfect, wise. But none of them could cross this edge. They look at you now. Only the part of me that was empty enough to fly. The wind gathers around you, curling your robe, pulling gently at your hair. It does not push, but it invites. You've come far, they say, but now it's time to let go. You know they don't mean jumping from the cliff. They mean something deeper, subtler, more terrifying. Letting go of the idea that you are a fixed thing. Letting go of the person who arrived at this edge. Letting go of trying to be anything at all. You feel it, the fear, the tightness, the impulse to hold on even just to the self that is aware of the fear. And yet, the cliff doesn't threaten you. It waits for you. You remember the parable of the acrobat, how the Buddha taught that balance is not found by clinging to another, nor by abandoning them, but by maintaining mindfulness in every movement. And here on the edge, mindfulness becomes your balance. The teacher offers you a stone, not to throw, not to carry, but to drop. You take it in your palm. It's small, smooth, heavy enough to feel real. This is what you're still holding, they say. Not just fear, identity, control, the need to know what's next. You hold it above the void. You hesitate, and then you let it go. It disappears into the dark, making no sound as it falls. But within your body, something shifts. A tension unclenches. A thread of control that ran through your chest begins to unravel. You breathe in deeply, fully. You breathe out longer than before. The teacher places a hand on your shoulder. There is no arrival, they say, only release. You sit there a little longer, watching the edge become not a boundary, but a doorway. You do not need to leap. You do not need to run. You only need to loosen. You bow to the teacher, not low, not formal, but completely. As you rise and walk away from the cliff, you notice your body is lighter, not because the journey is over, but because something has been shed. You no longer walk as someone going somewhere. You walk as space through which the world flows. The wind moves through you. The stars shimmer above. The earth no longer holds you with resistance, but with welcome. And in that gentle letting go, you feel a kind of power you've never known, not the power of control, but the power of release. The path curves down again, and behind you the teacher remains seated at the edge, a figure of surrender silhouetted against the infinite dark. You do not look back. There is nothing left to hold on to, and that is your freedom. You walk now not as someone seeking, not even as someone arriving, but simply as one who is. The path beneath your feet feels like part of your body. The sky above no longer looks down upon you, but breathes with you. There's a spaciousness in your chest that wasn't there before, as if the very air has made room inside you. You descend gently into a quiet valley where the night feels denser, almost velvet thick. The sound of a distant bell carries through the air, not struck recently, but as if its echo has been ringing for centuries. It draws you toward a stone gate, framed by flowering trees, their petals drifting lazily on the breeze. You pass beneath the gate, and at its center stands no shrine, no monument, but a simple mirror. It is round, polished, and placed upon a low pedestal of worn wood. It has no decoration, no inscription, just a single object reflecting everything and nothing at once. And before it, kneeling silently, is your next teacher. They are dressed as a pilgrim, a traveler like yourself, with dust on their robe and twigs in their hair. Their hands rest quietly on their knees. They are not meditating, not praying. They are simply witnessing both themselves and what lies beyond the image. You approach, and without being asked, kneel beside them. The mirror reflects the night sky above you. Your face, their face, the petals as they fall. But in the stillness, the reflection begins to feel less like a surface and more like a doorway. The teacher finally speaks. All your teachers have shown you something true. You nod, recalling each one the kind elder with soft eyes, the monk in the storm, the sweeping nun, the blind sage, the laughing child. So many voices, so many faces, but there is one you have not yet truly met. You glance again at the mirror. Yourself, they say. You look more deeply now. And you don't just see your features. You see everything you've carried, the questions, the joys, the hidden fatigue, the quiet longing, the masks you've worn, the small kindnesses you never mentioned, the pain you never voiced, the glimpses of clarity you doubted. And something shifts, not all at once, not dramatically, but tenderly. You begin to notice that your reflection doesn't need to be beautiful, or wise, or awakened. It simply needs to be seen not as a project, but as a presence. The teacher beside you places a hand over their heart. You are not your past, not your titles, not your mistakes. You are not even your spiritual path. They turn toward the mirror. You are this witnessing, this moment, this awareness that returns again and again. You breathe slowly, feeling tears begin to rise, not from sadness, but from recognition. This moment is not grand. It is not loud, but it is true. The teacher smiles gently. The final teacher is the one who does not leave. They rise without effort, bow once toward the mirror, not toward their own reflection, but toward the formless truth within it, and begin to walk away. You remain. For a long while, you stay kneeling, watching your face shift slightly in the soft moonlight, watching the petals drift and fall behind you, watching your own presence be. You do not try to interpret it. You do not try to capture it. You just witness. And in doing so, you remember something the Buddha once said: within this very body 6 feet in length lies the world's beginning, the world's end, and the path to liberation. You touch your chest gently. You feel your breath. You feel your aliveness. You feel your enoughness, not as a conclusion, but as an atmosphere. Eventually, you stand and bow to your reflection, not in reverence, but in recognition. You walk away from the mirror, and the night receives you like water, receiving a stone without resistance, without judgment, with absolute welcome. You are no longer following a path. You are being the path. You are no longer waiting for a teacher. You have become the one who listens. The petals continue to fall. The stars continue to shine, and the reflection remains not in the mirror, but in every step you take forward. The path has no clear direction now. It flows gently through open land, scattered with low stones and wind-polished grass. There are no markers, no signs, and yet you do not hesitate. Something in your chest, quiet, steady, moves with the confidence of someone who no longer needs a map. As you walk, the memory of your journey begins to gather within you, like twilight mist returning to the mountains. You remember the nun who swept the temple floor with such care that even dust became sacred. The monk who taught you to rest fully in stillness as tea cooled in his bowl. The boy who reminded you to see the world without naming it. The blind sage who taught you how to walk by trust, not sight. Each teacher gave you something not by filling you up, but by carving space within you. And now, as you come to what feels like the final turn in the path, you feel that space lit with a quiet brightness. The trail curves through a grove of lantern-lit trees. Hundreds of small lights hang from the branches like stars lowered to earth, their golden glow swaying softly in the breeze. Beneath them, the air is warm, like breath held between friends. Each lantern is unique, some smooth, some cracked, some barely lit, others radiant. And there at the center of the grove is a round stone platform. Upon it sit many cushions, but only one is occupied. You walk forward. The one who sits does not move. You recognize them instantly. It is you, not your reflection, not a vision, but yourself seated calmly with eyes closed, breathing easily. There is no surprise, no tension in this moment, only stillness. A return to something that has always been waiting. You sit down opposite yourself, and the silence that settles between the two of you is not empty, it is luminous. You look into your own face, not with judgment, not with critique. You simply see, and for the first time perhaps, you do not resist what you see. Not the lines, not the flaws, not the questions still unanswered. You see someone who has walked, who has listened, who has let go, who has become open enough to hold the teachings of 100 teachers and quiet enough to hear the one that has always lived within. A breeze moves through the grove, and the lanterns dance slightly. The light shifts, and in that shifting, you remember there is no final destination. There is no ultimate arrival. There is only this breath, this presence, this quiet companionship with yourself. You recall the final words of one of your earliest teachers, May. This help you remember sorrow is not weakness. It is the root of deep love. And you now understand everything you have met on this journey has been part of you all along. The kind eyes, the patient silence, the laughter of the child, the wisdom of the storm, all of it lived in your bones, waiting to be seen. You reach across the stone platform and take your own hand, not in a dramatic gesture, but in a quiet joining. The part of you that has searched and the part of you that has waited are now one. You breathe together a deep, full breath that feels like home. Around you, the lanterns begin to dim one by one, not in sadness, but as if they know their purpose has been fulfilled. The grove darkens slowly, gently, and you sit with your eyes closed now, listening to the quiet inside and around you. The final lesson is this: you are the teacher, you are the path, you are the stillness you've been searching for. You do not need to go further tonight. You do not need to seek another voice. Everything you've received, every step, every silence, every surrender, lives now in your breath, your body, your being. You lay down upon the cushion and let your head rest. Above the stars blink slowly, like eyes closing in sleep. A breeze stirs the trees, and it sounds like distant chanting, not in words, but in a harmony older than memory. You breathe in, you breathe out, and the 100 lights become one. And now, dear traveler, let the story dissolve. Let its images settle like petals on a quiet pond, not grasped, not clung to, just drifting into stillness. There is nothing more to understand tonight, nothing more to hold. The 100 teachers have spoken each in their own way, through silence, through wind, through laughter and grief, through mirrors and moonlight. But now their voices fade into the hush of your breath. There is no need to recall them all. Let the teachings find their home in you, not as ideas, but as sensations. A warmth in the chest, a gentler rhythm to your breathing, a softening in the places you once carried tightly closed. Feel your body now heavy and safe, cradled by the earth, covered by night. Let the soles of your feet release any last tension. Let your shoulders melt downward, unburdened. Let your jaw rest loose and free. Let your breath fall into an easy rhythm, like waves washing the shore of a forgotten island. You have walked far, not in distance, but in depth. You have met each teacher, not only on the outside, but in the quiet spaces within you, the spaces you rarely visit when the world rushes too fast. And now you've arrived in the only place that matters. This moment, this breath, this resting. You are no longer walking, you are being. You are no longer seeking, you are remembering. And the body remembers what the mind forgets, that you are already whole, already awake, already home. Let sleep take you now gently. Let dreams arrive as soft visitors, walking barefoot through the holes of your heart. You need do nothing. You need fix nothing. You are, and that is enough. Let yourself drift, now weightless, spacious, loved. The story ends, but your peace continues.